Have you ever felt a chill ripple down your spine while wandering through an old forest? Or sensed invisible gazes from the shadows of ancient ruins? These sensations carry the weight of folklore, tales that linger in places and murmur across centuries. Step into our realm, our narratives, where we plunge into the essence of these timeless myths. Brace yourself, for today we venture into England's fog-laden past to unearth stories of noble monarchs resting until called upon, rebels defying oppression from the forest's embrace, ghostly hounds scorching sacred doors, and warrior queens blazing with retribution. These are but a few of the enthralling characters whose grand tales await. King Arthur, the eternal sovereign. Listen well, and I'll recount an era veiled in haze and memory, a time when Britain yearned for a savior. It was a period of turmoil, with warlords clashing over a splintered realm, the hope of unity fading like whispers on the breeze. Yet even in the bleakest moments, prophecy offers a spark of promise. It was said a true king would emerge, a leader chosen not merely by lineage, but by fate itself. Enter Merlin, the mysterious enchanter, a seer of destinies whose vision pierced the present's veil. He understood the land needed more than a fighter, it needed an emblem. Thus, through potent sorcery, a trial was crafted. In London's heart, before a grand cathedral, a stone materialized, a splendid sword lodged deep within. Golden letters on the stone proclaimed, "Whoever draws this blade from stone and anvil is the rightful king of all England." Renowned knights and mighty lords journeyed from afar. They pulled and strained, muscles taut, hands gripping, but the stone guarded its mystery. The sword stood firm, a quiet challenge to their boasts of strength. Hope waned. Was the prophecy a mere mockery? Yet fate often favors the unexpected. Far from the bustling throng stood Arthur, a young squire raised in humble shadows by Sir Ector, unaware of the royal blood coursing through him. Sent to retrieve a blade for his foster brother, Kay, Arthur came upon the stone. Mistaking the sword for one left unattended, he seized its hilt and pulled. The blade slid free with ease, gleaming in the dim light, radiant and true. A murmur swept through the crowd. Who was this youth? How had he triumphed where the mightiest failed? Merlin unveiled the truth. This was no ordinary squire, but Arthur Pendragon, son of King Arthur, concealed for safety, now revealed as the throne's true heir. Thus began Camelot's golden era. Guided by Merlin's counsel, King Arthur founded a court famed across the globe. At its core was the storied Round Table, a beacon of fairness where knights gathered not as vassals to a crown, but as comrades united in mission. Lancelot, the most valiant. Sir Galahad, the most virtuous. Gawain, the chivalrous. These gallant knights swore oaths to honor, justice, and safeguarding the vulnerable. They rode from Camelot's radiant towers, their banners vivid against the sky, their feats resounding through shadowed woods and sunlit meadows. Arthur wed the radiant Guinevere, and for a time, Camelot seemed enchanted. Yet even in brilliance, darkness lurks. The bond between Lancelot, Arthur's closest ally, and Queen Guinevere, though perhaps pure, cast a shadow over the Round Table's unity. From the edges, murmurs of betrayal grew, fed by Arthur's kin, the scheming Mordred, whose heart simmered with jealousy and ambition. The quest for the Holy Grail challenged the knights, scattering them, exposing their weaknesses alongside their strengths. Flaws marred Camelot's flawless image. Treachery, once unimaginable, seeped into the court. Mordred struck when Arthur was absent, seizing the crown and fracturing the realm. The dream was unraveling. Arthur returned, heart-burdened but spirit unbroken. On the grim plain of Camlan, the final, tragic clash erupted. Brother turned against brother, knight against knight. The Round Table's ideals sank in a sea of blood and grief. Facing his traitorous son, Arthur fought with the ferocity of a wounded beast. He felled Mordred, but not without suffering a fatal wound. The battle won, the kingdom preserved, yet the king was fading. His last loyal knights bore him to a misty lakeshore. A barge, cloaked in shadow and guided by 3 enigmatic queens, emerged from the fog. They lifted the dying king aboard. "Where are you taking him?" a knight pleaded. With fading breath, Arthur spoke of a realm beyond mortal reach, the enchanted Isle of Avalon, where wounds might mend. The barge vanished into the mist, leaving a grieving land and a vow. Legend claims Arthur is not truly gone, only slumbering in Avalon, awaiting the hour of his people's greatest need. His tomb bears the words, Hic iacet Arthurus, Rex quondam, Rex que futurus, here lies Arthur, king once and king to come. His tale endures, a timeless song of bravery, brotherhood, betrayal, and the eternal hope that even in the darkest times, a legend may rise again. Robin Hood, the outlawed prince, defender of the downtrodden. Picture an England crushed beneath a tyrant's heel. A noble king, Richard the Lionheart, is far away, fighting in distant lands. And in his stead, power falls into grasping hands. Prince John rules with an iron fist. His sheriffs bleed the common folk dry with cruel taxes. And justice seems a forgotten dream. Forests are forbidden. Hardship is rife, and despair hangs heavy in the air. But even in the deepest shadow, rebellion can take root. Deep within the emerald heart of Sherwood Forest, a different kind of law holds sway. The law of defiance, the law of hope. For out of this time of need steps a figure swift as a forest stag, clad in Lincoln green. Some say he was a nobleman, the Earl of Huntingdon, wrongfully stripped of his lands and title. Others swear he was a simple yeoman, pushed too far by tyranny. Whatever his past, his name became a whispered prayer on the lips of the poor and a curse in the halls of the powerful, Robin Hood. His skill with the longbow was legendary. They say he could split another man's arrow at 100 paces. His shafts flying swift as thought, true as justice itself. He wasn't alone. Drawn to his side by shared purpose and a hatred of oppression came others who called the Greenwood home. First among them, the giant of a man called Little John, met, so the tales tell, in a clash of mighty quarterstaffs upon a narrow log bridge, a contest of strength and stubborn will that ended not in enmity, but in laughter and lifelong loyalty. Then came Friar Tuck, round of belly and red of cheek, as ready with a prayer as he was with his fists or a stout staff, proving that piety and rebellious spirit could walk hand in hand. Will Scarlet, bold and quick-tempered, much the miller's son, Alanadale, whose music could charm the birds from the trees. Together they became the merry men. Their home was the forest. Their roof, the canopy of ancient oaks that whispered secrets on the wind. Their life, one of daring freedom beneath the sun-dappled glades. And what did they do, this band of outlaws? They turned the tables on the oppressors. Fat bishops, greedy merchants, and above all, the cruel sheriff of Nottingham, these were their targets. An ambush on a lonely forest road, a horn call echoing through the trees, and suddenly ill-gotten gains were liberated. Coins meant to line the sheriff's pockets found their way into the empty hands of struggling villagers. Food destined for lavish feasts was shared amongst the hungry. They robbed from the rich, yes, but only from those whose wealth was built on the suffering of others. And they gave to the poor, offering a glimmer of hope, a spark of defiance that warmed the hearts of the downtrodden. Often Robin would risk capture himself, perhaps entering Nottingham in disguise to win the sheriff's own prize, a golden arrow, in an archery contest, only to vanish back into the greenwood's embrace, leaving the sheriff fuming in impotent rage. And amidst these adventures, there was Maid Marian, noble in spirit as well as birth, whose love for Robin was as strong and true as his aim, often joining him in his woodland sanctuary, a steadfast ally against the darkness. Word spread like wildfire. Robin Hood, the name became a legend. To the powerful, he was a menace, a thief, a rebel to be hunted down. The Sheriff of Nottingham, endlessly frustrated, laid traps, offered rewards, sent soldiers crashing through the undergrowth. But Sherwood kept its secrets well. Robin and his merry men knew its hidden paths, its secret hollows. They moved like ghosts, melting into the trees, their laughter echoing as the sheriff's men stumbled back empty-handed, mocked by the very forest itself. To the common folk, however, Robin Hood was a hero. He was the promise that even the mightiest could be challenged, that justice, though outlawed, could still prevail. He was the freedom of the greenwood, the defiant spirit of England's heart. Kings come and go, sheriffs rise and fall, but the legend of Robin Hood endures. Does King Richard finally return to pardon the noble outlaw? Does Robin meet a tragic end through treachery? The tales differ, fading like mist among the trees. But what remains is the echo of laughter in the forest, the memory of arrows flying true, and the enduring spirit of resistance against tyranny. Robin Hood lives on, not just in the rustling leaves of Sherwood, but in every heart that champions the poor, defies injustice, and dreams of freedom. He remains the eternal outlaw, forever aiming his bow at the heart of oppression, a timeless hero beneath the greenwood tree. St. George and the Dragon. Picture a kingdom shrouded in fear, nestled perhaps near the sun-baked lands of Libya, though some tales place it elsewhere. This realm, once prosperous, now lived under the shadow of a monstrous calamity. For near the city of Cyllene, within a fetid marsh or desolate cave, there lurked a dragon, not merely a beast of fang and claw, but a pestilence made flesh, its breath a poisonous fog that withered crops and choked the life from the very air. Its scales were like wicked shields, impenetrable to common steel, and its roar a sound that curdled blood and stole hope. To appease this horror, the terrified citizens offered tribute. First, their livestock, sheep and cattle driven trembling towards the beast's maw. But soon, that was not enough. The dragon's hunger grew, twisting into a demand for human life. And so, a terrible lottery began. Each day, lots were drawn, and a youth or maiden was chosen, adorned for death, and sent out to meet their doom. Tears watered the kingdom, but the dragon's hunger was relentless. Then came the day all had dreaded, the day the lot, blind to rank or plea, fell upon the king's own daughter, the gentle princess. Grief tore through the palace. The king offered all his gold, his silver, his kingdom's half. But the people, bound by the grim pact, insisted the princess must face the fate so many others had met. As the princess, robed in sorrow, walked slowly towards the place of sacrifice, destiny intervened. Along the road rode a knight, noble in bearing, his armor gleaming, a red cross perhaps emblazoned on his shield or tunic. This was George, a soldier of Christ, a tribune from Cappadocia, traveling through this afflicted land. He saw the weeping princess, the embodiment of innocence facing monstrous evil, and his heart, filled with courage born of faith, was moved to righteous anger. "Fear not," he declared, his voice clear and strong above the whispers of dread. "For in the name of my Lord Jesus Christ, I shall defend thee." He learned of the dragon, the terror that held the city captive. As he spoke words of comfort to the princess, the ground began to tremble. The air grew thick with a foul stench. From its lair, the dragon emerged, vast and terrible, its eyes burning with ancient malice, fixed upon its destined prey. But now, between the monster and the maiden stood the lone knight. George made the sign of the cross, commending his soul to God. Gripping his lance, spurred by unwavering faith, he charged. The dragon roared, loosing a blast of venomous breath, but George, protected by divine grace, rode through it. His lance, a spear of righteousness, struck the beast with tremendous force, piercing its thick hide, wounding it grievously. Yet the dragon, though wounded and roaring in pain, was not slain. Here the legend takes a turn towards wonder. George called to the princess, telling her to cast her girdle, the sash around her waist, about the dragon's neck. Trembling but trusting the holy knight, she obeyed. And behold, the fearsome beast, moments before a hurricane of destruction, became suddenly docile, tamed by that slender thread of courage and the power of the knight's faith. Like a lamb on a leash, the princess led the subdued monster back towards the city gates. Imagine the scene, the citizens on the walls, frozen first in terror, then disbelief, then overwhelming awe as their princess returned unharmed, leading the very source of their misery. George strode before them, his sword now drawn. "Fear no more," he proclaimed. "Believe in the God through whose power I have done this. Be baptized in his name, and I shall slay this beast forever." The king, overjoyed, readily agreed, and the people, witnessing the impossible, embraced the promise of salvation. True to his word, before the converted populace, St. George raised his sword, Ascalon, and with a final mighty blow ended the dragon's reign of terror. Joy erupted throughout the land. Thousands were baptized that day, embracing the faith that had delivered them. The king offered George treasures beyond counting, but the noble knight refused earthly reward. He asked only that the king govern justly, care for the poor, and honor God's churches. Then, his deed accomplished, St. George rode on, leaving behind a city reborn and a legend that would gallop through time. The tale of the dragon slayer, the champion of faith, the patron saint whose courage serves as an eternal banner against the dragons of fear and darkness. His story reminds us that even the most terrifying monsters can be overcome by faith, courage, and a righteous heart. Spring-heeled Jack, the leaping terror of London. Picture London, a city swelling with progress, yet shadowed by secrets. Imagine its cobblestone labyrinth under the gaslight's spectral glow, where fog rolled in thick and sudden, a grimy shroud swallowing sounds and blurring shapes. It was in this world, beginning in the 1830s, that whispers first arose. Whispers of something unnatural, something stalking the lonely lanes and lamplit streets. A figure that defied logic and preyed on fear itself. It began subtly, perhaps. A lone woman walking home near Lavender Hill feels a sudden icy grip. A tall cloaked figure leaps from the darkness, claws tearing at her clothes. The Lord Mayor of London himself addressed the reports, acknowledging the public alarm. Was he a demon escaped from the depths? Or perhaps, as some whispered, a cruel prank by a bored nobleman using theatrical tricks and mechanical devices to sow terror? The mystery only deepened as sightings, though becoming more sporadic, spread beyond the capital to the suburbs, across England, even surfacing decades later in Aldershot, where startled sentries reported a leaping figure slapping their faces before bounding into oblivion. But here's the chilling truth: despite the panic, the investigations, the rewards offered, Spring-heeled Jack was never caught. No culprit was ever definitively unmasked. No confession ever surfaced. He remained elusive, a question mark leaping through the fog of history. Was he one man or many copycats inspired by the initial hysteria? Was he human at all? The explanations offered ranged from the supernatural to the psychological, mass panic given a frightening form. As the gaslights gave way to electric lamps and the Victorian era faded, the sightings of Spring-Heeled Jack dwindled, eventually vanishing altogether. Yet he remains a chilling riddle etched in fog and fear. He is the bogeyman born of the industrial age, a symbol of the unknown horrors that might lurk just beyond the reach of science and reason. Hidden in the shadowed corners of the sprawling city, a phantasmal figure forever leaping, forever uncaught, a strange and terrifying legend bounding from the dark heart of Victorian London. Merlin, the wild magic of Britain. More than just a wizard, more than a hermit sage. He was a figure born of twilight, balanced between worlds. Some tales claim he was the son of darkness itself, an incubus seeking influence among mortals, yet saved for the light by the purity of his human mother and the grace of timely baptism. From this strange union, he drew uncanny power, the ability to see the currents of time, to speak with the beasts of the field and birds of the air, to command the very elements, and to walk unseen amongst men. He was the wild magic of ancient Britain, given voice and form. His wisdom was revealed early in a time of fear. The tyrant King Vortigern sought to build a mighty tower, a bastion against his enemies. But night after night, the foundations crumbled, the stones refusing to stand. His court magicians, trembling, declared only the blood of a fatherless child could appease the angered earth. A search was made, and young Merlin, the boy of mysterious birth, was brought before the king. But instead of fear, Merlin offered insight. "Your tower falls not for lack of blood," he declared, his young voice ringing with unnatural authority, "but because the ground beneath churns with conflict." He revealed a hidden pool beneath the foundations and commanded it be drained. There, for all to see, lay two dragons, one white, one red, locked in slumber. As they awoke, they fought with terrible fury. The white dragon at first prevailing, then faltering before the resurgent red. "So it shall be," Merlin prophesied, his eyes gazing far beyond the struggling beasts. "The white dragon of the Saxons shall encroach, but the red dragon of the Britons shall endure, and from the line of Pendragon shall come a king whose glory will shine like the sun." And so Merlin became the hidden hand guiding Britain's destiny. He stood beside Uther Pendragon, a king consumed by desire for Igraine, the beautiful wife of the Duke of Cornwall. Merlin agreed to help, but his price was steep. Weaving illusions fine as mist, he cloaked Uther in the guise of the Duke, allowing him entrance to Tintagel's fortress and Igraine's embrace. From that night of magic and deception, a child was conceived, Arthur. True to his word, Merlin claimed the infant at birth, spiriting him away into secrecy, entrusting him to the loyal Sir Ector to be raised unaware of his royal blood. It was Merlin who foresaw the need for a sign, who perhaps enchanted the very stone that held the sword of destiny, ensuring that only the true king, the child he had hidden, could draw it forth and unite the fractured land. When Arthur took the throne, Merlin was his guide, his mentor, his shield. His counsel was sought in war and peace. His magic shaped the very foundations of Camelot. Did he raise Stonehenge with but a word, moving giant stones across the sea? Did he have a hand in crafting the mystical Round Table itself, a symbol of the unity he strove for? The legends abound. He was the deep wisdom behind Arthur's youthful strength, the seer who warned of dangers yet to come, the enchanter who could conjure armies from mist or strike enemies blind. For a time, through his guidance, the dream of Camelot burned brightly, a beacon of hope in a troubled world. Yet even the wisest, those who can read the stars and command the spirits, are not immune to the follies of the heart. Merlin, ancient and powerful, became utterly enchanted by Nimue, the clever huntress, sometimes called Vivian, a lady of the lake's magic. He saw in her a sharp mind eager for knowledge, perhaps a reflection of his own power. Besotted, he began to teach her his spells, his deepest secrets, the words of making and unmaking, pouring his centuries of accumulated wisdom into her youthful hands. He ignored the warnings in his own prophetic sight, blinded by affection or perhaps a weariness with his long existence. And Nimue, clever and perhaps ambitious, or maybe simply afraid of the ancient half-demon power she caught, learned her lessons well. She coaxed from him the spells of binding, of slumber, of containment. Then one day, beneath the hawthorn trees heavy with blossom, or within a hidden cave shimmering with crystal, or perhaps within the bough of an ancient oak, she turned his own magic upon him. She wove the spells he had taught her, creating an invisible tower, a prison of air, or sealing him within stone or wood. There, the legends say, Merlin remains, trapped, alive, aware, his immense mind undimmed, but powerless to escape, forever entombed by the magic he had and the love that undid him. So ends the active tale of Merlin, the wild sage, the kingmaker, the master of enchantments. His legacy is woven into the very fabric of Arthurian legend, the power behind the throne, the wisdom that guided the Golden Age, the tragic figure whose own heart became his undoing. His name still conjures images of mist-shrouded towers, ancient forests, and magic deep as the roots of the earth. He sleeps now, perhaps in his eternal prison, a timeless reminder of the awesome power of magic and the inescapable magic of the human heart. Boudica, the warrior queen's vengeance. Imagine Britain, AD 60. Roman legions patrol the land. Their shining eagles, symbols of an unyielding empire. Forts stand stark against the hills. New towns rise, echoing Roman ways. But beneath this veneer of order, resentment simmers among the native tribes. In the flat, fertile lands of the east live the Iceni, proud people led by their king, Prasutagus, and his queen, Boudica. History paints her vividly, tall, imposing, her voice commanding, her eyes fierce, and her long hair like a torrent of fire falling upon her shoulders. A queen of presence, a queen of spirit. King Prasutagus, seeking perhaps to safeguard his people even in death, made a fateful decision. In his will, he named the distant Roman Emperor Nero co-heir alongside his own two daughters, hoping this diplomatic gesture would preserve some autonomy for the Iceni. But Rome, in its arrogance, saw only weakness. Upon Prasutagus' death, Roman officials descended like vultures. They ignored the will, declared the kingdom annexed, seized lands, and plundered the royal household with callous greed. And then the ultimate degradation, Queen Boudica herself was publicly stripped and flogged like a common slave. And her young daughters, princesses of the Iceni, suffered unspeakable violation at the hands of Roman soldiers. Honor dragged in the mud, sovereignty spat upon, motherhood desecrated, an injustice so profound, so personal, it ignited a firestorm in Boudica's heart. The whips that tore Boudica's flesh also tore the last vestiges of Iceni submission. Rising from her humiliation, her voice now laced with the venom of betrayal, she rallied her people, not just the Iceni, but neighboring tribes like the Trinovants, who also groaned under Roman taxes and the arrogance of Roman settlers, flocked to her banner. Imagine her standing tall upon a chariot, her daughters beside her, bearing witness to their shared shame. Her fiery hair ablaze in the sun, her voice ringing across the gathered warriors. She spoke not of treaties or compromise, but of vengeance. She spoke of the lash, the theft, the violation. She spoke of freedom from the Roman yoke. And the tribes roared their assent, a tide of fury ready to break upon their conquerors. The storm broke with terrifying speed, catching the Romans utterly unprepared. The main legions under Governor Suetonius Paulinus were far away, campaigning against the druids on the Isle of Anglesey. Boudicca's first target, Camulodunum, Colchester, the hated symbol of Roman power filled with arrogant veterans. The Iceni war host fell upon it like wolves. The town, poorly defended, was overrun, sacked, and burned to the ground. Its inhabitants, Roman and collaborator alike, were shown no mercy. The temple built to honor the Emperor Claudius, a monument to their subjugation, became a funeral pyre. A Roman legion sent to relieve the town was ambushed and cut to pieces. Panic spread. Next, Londinium, London, a bustling hub of commerce, rich but undefended. Suetonius raced back but saw the city was lost. He made the brutal calculation to abandon it. Boudicca's warriors surged in, and London burned. Its wealth plundered, its people slaughtered. Then Verulamium, St. Albans, another prosperous town, met the same fiery end. Tens of thousands perished as monuments to Roman arrogance turned to ash under the rebels' vengeful fury. News of the disaster finally reached Suetonius Paulinus. His legions marched grimly south, the smoke of burning cities staining the horizon. He gathered his forces, the disciplined 14th Legion, veterans of the 20th, auxiliaries, perhaps 10,000 men in all, a fraction of Boudicca's vast horde, but hardened professional soldiers. He knew he had one chance. Choose the battlefield wisely. Somewhere, perhaps along the Roman road called Watling Street, in a defile with woods protecting his flanks and rear, Suetonius drew up his lines, a small knot of iron discipline facing a sea of furious Britons. Imagine the scene, the howling, painted Briton warriors, confident in their overwhelming numbers, clashing shields, screaming defiance, and facing them, the silent, steady ranks of Roman legionaries, shields locked, spears ready. Boudicca, a figure of terrible majesty, drove her chariot along the lines, her daughters beside her, urging her warriors to fight for freedom, for their families, for revenge, reminding them she fought not for kingdom or wealth, but as an ordinary woman avenging lost liberty, her own bruised body, her daughter's violated innocence. Then the charge. A massive wave of Britons surged forward, but the Romans held. Volleys of heavy pila javelins tore through the charging ranks, followed by the deadly short work of the gladius sword in the tight confines of disciplined formations. The Britons' sheer numbers became their undoing, pressing them forward into the Roman meat grinder. Unable to retreat, their escape blocked by their own wagons filled with families watching the expected victory. The battle turned into a horrific slaughter. The Iceni dream of freedom died on that field, drowned in blood. Roman vengeance was swift and brutal in the aftermath. And Boudicca, facing capture, the proud queen would not submit to Roman chains to be paraded in triumph through the streets of Rome. Some say she took poison, choosing a quick, defiant end. Others believe she succumbed to illness, her fierce spirit finally broken by the scale of the defeat. Her body was lost to history, but her name, her story, blazed into legend. Boudicca's revolt was crushed, a brief, fiery convulsion against the might of Rome. Yet her name echoes down the centuries. She remains the warrior queen, the mother driven to vengeance, the embodiment of a people's ferocious spirit, rising against impossible odds. Though defeated, her defiance carved a permanent scar on Roman memory and forged an enduring symbol of resistance, A testament to the fire that burns in the heart when freedom is stolen and dignity is trampled underfoot. She is the echo of the chariot wheel, the glint of defiant eyes, the enduring spirit of Britain's fierce heart. Black Shuck, the demon dog of East Anglia. In the folklore of England, there are many tales of ghostly hounds, guardians of lonely places and harbingers of doom. But perhaps none are as feared, as chillingly specific, as the great black dog of the eastern counties, the creature known as Old Shuck, Black Shuck. The name itself, some say, whispers of demons, derived from the Old English skucka, a fiend, a dark spirit given canine form. He is the ancient dread of East Anglia, a nightmare padding silently out of the region's history and fog. What do they say he looks like, this phantom hound? Imagine a dog of unnatural size, vast as a calf, some say even as large as a small horse. Its coat is shaggy, matted, and blacker than a moonless night. It moves with an unnerving silence, its great paws making no sound on the path, though sometimes listeners report the chilling rattle of unseen chains. But worst of all, the feature recounted time and again, striking terror into the hearts of witnesses, are the eyes. Great, saucer-like eyes that glow with a malevolent, fiery light, often blazing red like hellfire. Some tales even speak of a single cyclopean eye burning in the center of its monstrous head. To meet that gaze, the stories warn, is to invite misfortune, even death, into your home. Where does this spectral beast roam? He haunts the liminal spaces, the borders between worlds, lonely country lanes at twilight, desolate stretches of coastline lashed by North Sea winds, fog-bound churchyards where the ancient dead lie sleeping, the winding paths across the eerie, flat expanse of the fens. To encounter Black Shuck is rarely a prelude to a physical attack. His terror is more insidious. He is an omen, a harbinger. His appearance foretells death, perhaps for the witness or someone close to them. He is the spectral watcher on the threshold, a reminder of mortality padding silently alongside the living. But the legend of Black Shuck is not merely whispered folklore. It erupted into terrifying recorded history on a single dreadful day, Sunday, the 4th of August 1577. A storm of ungodly violence raged across Suffolk. Heaven's artillery seemed unleashed, thunder cracked, and rain lashed down. Amidst this tempest, as the terrified congregation huddled within Holy Trinity Church in Blithburgh, the doors burst open. There, framed against the storm-racked sky, stood an enormous black hound, eyes blazing. It ran snarling down the nave, past the cowering worshippers, killing a man and a boy with swift, brutal efficiency. The air crackled, and some say the church steeple itself collapsed through the roof in the creature's wake. As it departed, it slammed against the north door, leaving scorch marks deep in the ancient wood, marks, they say, you can still see today, the devil's fiery signature. And on that very same fearful Sunday, miles away in St. Mary's Church, Bungay, the same horror unfolded again. The storm, the fearful service, and then the sudden appearance of the great black dog, running wildly amongst the people, wringing the necks of two men at prayer before vanishing as mysteriously as it had arrived. That day of terror cemented Black Shuck's place as East Anglia's most fearsome phantom. For centuries since, the warnings have been passed down: stay indoors during violent storms, avert your gaze if you see a large black dog on a lonely road after dark, never follow if you hear the rattle of chains in the mist. Sightings, though less dramatic than the horrors of 1577, have continued, glimpses of a huge dark shape padding silently along a lane, the sudden appearance of those terrible glowing eyes in the beam of car headlights, the inexplicable feeling of being watched, followed by something ancient and malevolent. What is Black Shuck? A demon? A manifestation of the storm's fury? The soul of a damned creature? Or simply a folk memory of Norse death hounds brought by Viking invaders long ago? The mystery endures, as persistent as the mists that creep across the fens. He remains a potent symbol of the fear of the dark, the power of landscape, and the ancient dread that can still quicken the pulse on a lonely night. So, if you ever find yourself traveling the winding lanes of East Anglia when dusk is falling and a storm is brewing, listen closely. You might just hear the silent footfalls or catch a glimpse of burning eyes in the gloom. You might just encounter Black Shuck, the demon dog, still haunting the wild edges of the world. Herne the Hunter, the horned ghost of Windsor Forest. Imagine the vast expanse of Windsor Great Park, where kings and queens have ridden for centuries beneath mighty oaks. It's a place steeped in history, but also touched by the uncanny. For when the moon is high, or the storm winds howl through the branches, some say you might glimpse him or hear the chilling echo of his passage. Herne the Hunter, the antlered ghost, forever bound to this royal woodland. He is a figure of awe and terror, a phantom crowned with the wildness of the stag, often seen riding a spectral steed, leading a pack of baying hellhounds, the rattle of unseen chains mingling with the wind's mournful cry. But who was Herne before he became this spectral huntsman? The most famous tales, perhaps spun first in Elizabethan times, speak of a mortal man, a keeper in Windsor Forest during the days of King Richard II. Herne was renowned for his skill in the hunt, his knowledge of the forest's ways unsurpassed, earning him the king's favor. But royal favor breeds jealousy, like ivy strangling an oak. Other keepers, envious of Herne's standing, plotted against him. Some stories say they sabotaged his hunts, falsely accusing him of poaching or witchcraft before the king. Others tell a more dramatic tale, that Herne bravely saved King Richard from the charge of a cornered, furious stag but was mortally wounded in the act. A dark magician, appearing from the forest depths, offered to heal Herne, binding the antlers of the slain stag to the hunter's head, but in exchange cursed him or stole his woodland skills. Whatever the cause, be it slander or sorcery, Herne fell into disgrace and deep despair. Driven mad by misfortune, he sought out a solitary ancient oak tree deep within the forest and there ended his own life. But death offered no peace. Soon whispers turned to fearful sightings. Herne's spirit, forever marked by the antlers, that symbol of the wild he both mastered and was perhaps cursed by, began to haunt the forest, especially the area around the ill-fated oak that now bore his name. Travelers lost their way near Herne's oak. Cattle sickened and died. Trees withered as if blasted by an unseen force. And sometimes, on moonless nights, the figure itself would appear, tall, menacing, antlered brow silhouetted against the sky. The sound of rattling chains echoed through the trees, striking fear into the hearts of any who crossed his path. Over time, Herne's legend grew, merging with the older, deeper magic of the wild hunt, that ghostly procession of spectral riders and hounds said to sweep across the land, particularly during storms or times of upheaval. Herne became seen as the leader of Windsor's own wild hunt, galloping through the night sky or the forest floor, his horn blowing a chilling summons, his spectral pack flowing like a river of ghosts through the trees, a terrifying spectacle for any mortals unfortunate enough to witness it. To see Herne the Hunter, the legends warn, is no mere fright. It is an omen. His appearance is said to portend national disaster, misfortune for the realm, or even trouble for the royal family residing so close by in Windsor Castle. He is a figure tied intrinsically to the fate of the land and its rulers. Though the original Herne's oak is long gone, claimed by time or storm, the legend persists, clinging to the forest like ivy. Other oaks have inherited the name, and the feeling remains that Herne is still out there, a guardian spirit twisted by tragedy, or perhaps an echo of older, wilder gods who once claimed these woods. So, should you ever walk in Windsor Great Park as twilight deepens or when the wind howls like phantom hounds through the ancient branches, listen carefully. You might hear the distant baying, the rattle of chains, or catch a fleeting glimpse of an antlered figure moving between the trees. It might just be Herne, the hunter, still riding the storm, forever bound to his forest domain, a chilling reminder of jealousy's poison, despair's dark end, and the wild, untamable magic that lingers in England's ancient heartwoods. Lady Godiva, the naked truth of compassion. Imagine Coventry in the mid-11th century, ruled by the powerful Leofric, Earl of Mercia, a man of great influence known for his stern authority. While Leofric held sway, his wife, the Lady Godiva, or Gogifu, meaning God's gift, as she was truly known, possessed a different kind of power. She was renowned not only for her noble birth and beauty but for her deep piety, her gentle heart, and a profound compassion that resonated with the common folk who lived under her husband's rule. For Earl Leofric, perhaps driven by the needs of his vast domain or simply a ruler's prerogative, had levied heavy taxes upon the people of Coventry. Tolls and dues weighed heavily on the merchants, the farmers, the artisans, until the cries of the burdened folk reached the ears of their gentle countess. Moved by their suffering, Lady Godiva went repeatedly to her formidable husband, pleading the people's case, begging him to lessen the crushing weight of his taxes. She spoke of hardship, of hunger, of the loyalty his people showed him. But Leofric remained unmoved, perhaps viewing the taxes as necessary or her pleas as mere womanly sentiment. Exasperated, perhaps by her persistence, worn down by pleas he deemed naked through the public square? It was unthinkable, a demand designed to humiliate, to force her silence through sheer impossible indecency. Any ordinary noblewoman would have shrunk back in horror, defeated. But Godiva's compassion ran deeper than her own pride or modesty. She saw the suffering of the people, weighed it against her own deep sense of propriety and fear, and found her duty clear. Her heart, attuned perhaps more to heaven's grace than earthly shame, made its choice. For the sake of the people she served, she would endure the unendurable. She agreed to Leofric's cruel terms. Word spread through Coventry like wildfire. Their lady, their gentle Godiva, would subject herself to this ordeal for their sake. Filled with respect and awe for her sacrifice, Godiva sent out a proclamation on the appointed day, at the appointed hour. Every citizen was to remain indoors, shutter their windows, bolt their doors, and avert their eyes. Let no soul gaze upon her vulnerability, offered up for their relief. When the day dawned, Lady Godiva prepared herself. She unbound her famously long hair, letting it fall about her like a living cloak, a veil of spun gold cascading down, her only covering. Then, mounting her horse, commending her soul to God, she began her solitary ride. Imagine the scene, the bustling market town, usually alive with chatter and commerce, now utterly silent. Doors barred, shutters closed. The streets held their breath as the lone figure passed, horses' hooves echoing strangely in the stillness. Godiva rode on, veiled only by her hair and her courage, her gaze fixed forward, enduring the shame for the promise of her people's freedom. But as later legends would add, not every eye remained closed. One man, a tailor known forever after as Peeping Tom, consumed by curiosity or base desire, bored a small hole in his shutters to steal a forbidden glance. Yet the moment his eye met the keyhole, divine retribution struck. He was instantly struck blind, a stark warning against violating such profound sacrifice and trust. Godiva completed her harrowing ride, returning to her husband's hall, silent, perhaps trembling, but resolute. Leofric, whether stunned by her sheer audacity, shamed by her selfless courage, or simply bound by his word, could not deny her. He fulfilled his promise. The heavy taxes were lifted from Coventry. A wave of relief and jubilation swept through the town, and the name of Lady Godiva was praised, sung, and woven into the very fabric of the city's identity. And so, the tale of Lady Godiva endures. It's remembered often for the shocking image of the naked ride. But look deeper. See past the sensationalism, and you find the true heart of the legend, a story of profound compassion, taking precedence over personal pride, of courage born from empathy and the quiet strength of a noble lady who laid bare her vulnerability for the common good. Lady Godiva remains a timeless symbol, not of exhibition but of selfless sacrifice. Her silent ride through Coventry an enduring testament to the power of a compassionate heart to challenge even the most hardened authority. The Green Man, the Face in the Leaves. Look closely in the ancient churches, cathedrals, and even old manor houses across Britain and Europe. Search amongst the carvings high on pillars, tucked away in shadowy vaults, or peering cheekily from choir stalls. There you might find him, a face distinctly human yet utterly strange, emerging from a riot of foliage. This is the Green Man, not a character from a single story, but a recurring motif, an ancient riddle carved in oak and stone whose origins whisper from a time before written records. What does he look like, this curious face? Sometimes he is serene, almost hidden, his features woven entirely from ivy, oak leaves, or hawthorn branches. Other times he is more startling, shown with vines and stems erupting directly from his mouth, his nostrils, his ears, even his eyes, as if the irrepressible life force of nature itself is bursting forth from within him. He can be peaceful, mischievous, or even grotesque, a multitude of expressions for a singular powerful symbol. And perhaps most intriguingly, this figure, seemingly so pagan, so rooted in the wild wood, stares back at us most often from within the sacred walls of Christian churches. What does he represent, this face in the leaves? Most feel instinctively his connection to the natural world. He is the spirit of the primal forest, the embodiment of vegetative life, the endless cycle of growth in spring, fullness in summer, decay in autumn, and rebirth from winter's sleep. He is the sap rising in the stone veins, the green fuse driving the flower, the reminder that life persists, pushes through, reclaims even the hardest stone. He embodies fertility, wildness, the untamed energy that existed long before cathedrals were built and persists long after empires fall. But why is he there, staring down from the cathedral wall or hiding beneath a monk's seat? Here lies the heart of his mystery. Was he a memory of older pre-Christian gods, the antlered lord of beasts, or Silvanus, the Roman wood god, subtly woven into the new faith by cunning craftsmen? Was he a tolerated folk symbol, a familiar spirit of place allowed a niche within the house of God? Or did Christianity adopt him, reinterpreting him perhaps as a symbol of resurrection, life emerging from death, or even as a warning against earthly desires, the green thoughts of or envy spewing forth? The truth remains elusive, shrouded in the green shadows of the past. Though his carved heyday was centuries ago, the Green Man has never truly disappeared. He stares out from weathered pub signs named in his honor. He inspires modern artists and poets. He is embraced by those seeking connection to the earth and its cycles, a potent symbol for environmental consciousness and neo-pagan paths. He proves that some images hold a power that transcends specific beliefs or eras, speaking directly to something deep within the human psyche, our intrinsic link to the green growing world. So the Green Man remains an enigma, forever peering from the threshold between the wild and the tamed, between the pagan past and the present. He is not a character with a story told, but a symbol whose story is eternally unfolding in the unfurling leaf, the burgeoning bud, the persistent vine. He is the face of nature's enduring power, its cycle of death and rebirth, silently challenging us from wood and stone, reminding us of the vibrant, mysterious, and essential green world that surrounds us and sustains us all. Keep an eye out for him. He is watching and waiting in more places than you might think. The Lambton Worm. In days of old, the Lambton family held sway over fertile lands beside the winding river Wear. They were lords of note, dwelling in their ancestral castle. But the young heir, John Lambton, was a wild and reckless youth. He cared little for mass or prayer, preferring the thrill of the hunt or, indeed, casting a line into the river, even on the holiest of days. A Sunday morning meant for worship, his heart was filled with defiance, his days spent in idleness and sport. One Sunday morning, while the pious folk of the parish knelt in church, young John Lambton strolled down to the Wear, fishing rod in hand, whistling a careless tune. He cast his line into the flowing water, expecting perhaps a salmon or trout. But what he pulled forth was no earthly fish. It was a small, hideous creature, black as night, eel-like and slimy, with a fearsome head, and some versions say 9 uncanny holes along each side of its gruesome mouth. It writhed upon his line, a thing of slime and malice. Disgusted, perhaps unnerved by its sheer ugliness and the unholy timing of its capture, John cursed the creature, tore it from his hook, and flung it carelessly down a nearby well, known thereafter as the Worm Well, before striding off. At last, Sir John Lambton, no longer the careless boy but a hardened knight, returned home from the Crusades. He found not a prosperous estate but lands blighted by fear, his people suffering under the tyranny of a monster. And worse, he learned the worm's origin, the foul creature he himself had caught and cast aside on that defiant Sunday morning years ago. His youthful sin had returned, magnified 1,000-fold to haunt his home. Filled with remorse and a knight's resolve, Sir John swore he would destroy the beast he had unleashed. But how to fight a creature that could not be killed by ordinary means? Sir John sought counsel from a wise woman, a hermit or witch dwelling nearby, known for her knowledge of dark things. She listened to his tale, then revealed the worm's secret and the perilous path to victory. "You must face the worm in the heart of the river Wear," she instructed. "Forge for yourself a suit of armor studded thick with spearheads, sharp as razors. When the worm coils around you, the spikes will pierce it. Hack it with your sword, and let the river current swiftly carry each severed piece away, ere they can rejoin." But there was more, a condition laden with dread. "Before you go," the wise woman warned, "you must make a solemn vow. Slay the worm, and then strike down the very next living thing you set eyes upon. Fail in this, and though you kill the beast, a curse shall fall upon your house. For 9 generations, no lord of Lambton shall die peacefully in his bed." Sir John, seeing no other way, accepted the grim terms. He had the spiked armor forged, a terrifying carapace bristling like a deadly star. He made the dreadful vow. Then, commending his soul to God, he strode into the river and called out the worm. The monster, vast and furious, surged into the water to meet him. It wrapped its immense coils around the knight, seeking to crush him. But the spearheads bit deep, tearing into its flesh, turning its own assault against it. As the river ran foul with worm blood, Sir John hacked and hewed with his sword, severing chunk after chunk of the beast's body, watching as the swift current swept the pieces downstream, unable to magically rejoin. The battle raged, but finally, the great lambton worm was no more. Exhausted but victorious, Sir John sounded his hunting horn, the prearranged signal. He had instructed his men back at the castle to release his favorite hunting hound upon hearing the horn, intending to sacrifice the loyal dog to fulfill the terrible vow. But alas, his aged father, overjoyed at hearing the signal of victory and forgetting the grim instruction in his relief, rushed out first, eager to embrace his heroic son. Sir John froze in horror. Slay his own father? Impossible. He could not commit such a monstrous act. The hound came bounding out moments later, and Sir John sorrowfully struck it down, but the vow was already broken. The first living thing he saw was his father. And so, despite the land being freed from the worm's terror, the curse fell upon the house of Lambton. For 9 long generations, the legend insists, the lords of Lambton met their ends through violence, accident, or sudden illness, never finding peace in their final hours. The tale of the Lambton worm became etched into the landscape itself, the Worm Well, the Worm Hill, a powerful local legend. A chilling reminder that youthful sins can breed monstrous consequences, that redemption can demand terrible sacrifices, and that the threads of fate, once tangled by a broken vow, can cast a long and enduring shadow. Jack the Giant Killer. Imagine the rugged coasts of Cornwall or the rolling hills of Wales in an age when the earth groaned under the tread of giants. These were not gentle giants, but monstrous beings, mountains of malice, with appetites as vast as their statures, feasting on livestock and all too often on unfortunate travelers. Fear was their currency, and the land cried out for a champion. Yet help came not from a mighty knight in shining armor, but from an unexpected quarter, a simple farmer's son named Jack. He possessed no great strength or size, but owned a mind sharper than any sword and a heart brimming with audacious courage. The terror began near Land's End, where the towering island rock of St. Michael's Mount rose from the sea. There dwelt the giant cormorant, a brute 18 feet tall, who waded ashore at low tide to steal cattle and sheep by the score, carrying them back to his craggy fortress. The folk of Marazion lived in constant dread. Young Jack, hearing their plight, declared he would end this reign of terror. Under the cloak of night, armed only with a pickaxe, a shovel, and a horn, he rode across to the mount. All night he dug, carving a deep pit near the giant's lair, cunningly concealing it with sticks and straw. As dawn broke, Jack blew a mighty blast upon his horn. Cormoran awoke with a roar, saw the small figure daring to challenge him, and charged blindly forward, right into the hidden pit. Down crashed the giant, stunned and trapped. Jack, quick as a flash, brought his pickaxe down upon the monster's skull, ending Cormorant's tyranny forever. News of this feat spread, and the clever lad became known as Jack the Giant Killer. Emboldened by his success and gifted, perhaps, a sword of sharpness for his bravery, Jack set out seeking further adventure. Soon he wandered into a dark wood where the fearsome giant Blunderbore dwelled in an enchanted castle, its courtyard littered with the bones of unfortunate victims. Blunderbore captured weary travelers, imprisoning them before his grisly feasts. Jack, finding the giant and his brother napping after a heavy meal, crept into their lair. With nimble fingers and stout ropes, he fashioned strong nooses, slipped them around the sleeping giants' necks, secured the other ends to sturdy beams. Then, with a great shout and perhaps a prod from his sharp sword, he startled them awake. As they leaped up in confusion, the nooses tightened, strangling the life from the monstrous pair. Jack joyfully released the prisoners, who hailed him as their savior. Jack's fame grew, and so did his encounters. Journeying into Wales, he met a giant known for his cunning as much as his size, sometimes said to have 2 heads, adding wicked cleverness to brute strength. This giant invited Jack to stay the night, planning to devour him later. A great feast was laid out, and the giant gorged himself. Jack, however, had secretly filled a large leather bag hidden beneath his coat with hasty pudding. Groaning about being overly full, Jack declared, "Watch this trick." And taking his knife, he dramatically slit the pudding bag, letting the contents spill out. The gullible giant, impressed and feeling equally stuffed, cried, "Oh, dese splutter her nails, her can do that trick herself." He seized his own knife, plunged it into his enormous belly, and fell down dead on the spot. Jack, chuckling at his own cleverness, helped himself to the giant's treasure. Through his adventures, Jack acquired wondrous items to aid his quest, perhaps a cap that bestowed knowledge, shoes that granted incredible speed, or a cloak that rendered him invisible, gifts from grateful lords or spoils taken from vanquished giants. Armed with these and his own inexhaustible wit, Jack rescued knights, freed damsels, and challenged giants with multiple heads. Each encounter a testament to his bravery and cunning. He faced down Thunderdell, the most terrible of giants, using invisibility and speed to confound and finally defeat the brute. His deeds became legendary throughout the land, reaching the ears of King Arthur himself. The king welcomed the young hero to Camelot, showering him with honors, knighting him Sir Jack, and some say even granting him a place at the famed Round Table. Jack, no longer just a farmer's son, married a beautiful duchess whom he had rescued, lived in wealth and honor. His giant-slaying days behind him, but his stories told and retold in halls and cottages alike. And so the tale of Jack the Giant Killer lives on, a timeless story beloved by generations. He is the ultimate underdog, the quick-witted hero who proves that true strength lies not in size or muscle but in courage, ingenuity, and a refusal to be intimidated by overwhelming odds. Jack reminds us that even the biggest, most fearsome giants, whether they walk the earth or dwell within our own fears, can be overcome with a sharp mind, a brave heart, and perhaps a well-timed trick. Mother Shipton, the prophetess of Knaresborough. Her story begins not in a castle hall, but as legend insists, in a dark cave beside the rushing river Nid near the Yorkshire town of Knaresborough. It's said she was born Ursula Southisle around the year 1488, ushered into the world amidst a terrifying thunderstorm, a tempest that mirrored the strangeness of her birth. Whispers claimed her conception was unnatural, her father perhaps a shadowy spirit or even the devil himself, marking her from her first breath as something other. And nature itself seemed to echo this otherworldly beginning. For the child Ursula was said to be startlingly, almost unnervingly unconventional in appearance. Beauty twisted into strangeness with perhaps a large crooked nose, misshapen limbs, and eyes that held an unnerving, knowing depth. Growing up in Knaresborough, Ursula's unusual looks and perhaps a sharp, perceptive mind set her apart. Was she merely wise beyond her years, observant of the patterns of life and politics? Or did she truly possess gifts beyond mortal ken? Neighbors might have sought her out for advice, for herbal remedies, or perhaps, with a shiver of fear and fascination, for glimpses into the future. They might have called her witch, wise woman, or cunning wife. Eventually, she married a local carpenter, Toby Shipton, and history would forever know her by that married name, Mother Shipton. But it wasn't her marriage that etched her into England's memory. It was the prophecies, riddles wrapped in rhyming verse, seeds of future sown in cryptic words. Whispers began during her lifetime that Mother Shipton could foresee events great and small. Did she predict the fall of powerful men, the dissolution of the great monasteries under King Henry VIII, the fate of local harvests, or wandering ships? The legends claim she did. They paint a picture of a woman whose strange eyes saw beyond the veil of the present, perceiving the hidden threads of tomorrow. But Mother Shipton's true fame blossomed long after her supposed death around 1561. In the following centuries, little pamphlets and chapbooks, printed on cheap paper and sold to eager audiences, began to appear, filled with startling prophecies attributed to her name. Did she truly foresee London's great fire blazing through narrow streets? Did her visions reveal the defeat of the mighty Spanish Armada? Did she speak of carriages moving without horses, of iron floating upon the water, of thoughts flying around the world in an instant, of men taking to the skies like birds? The printed word declared it so. Her fame spread like wildfire far beyond Yorkshire. Yet ambiguity clung to these verses like ivy. How much was genuine foresight warped by time and retelling? How much was shrewd observation? And how much was pure invention, cleverly crafted after the events had passed, simply pinned onto the legendary name of the Knaresborough seer? Her legend became forever intertwined with the strange landscape of her birth. The dark cave by the river and the nearby petrifying well, where dripping water turns objects to stone, seemed fittingly uncanny neighbors for England's most famous prophetess. Her notoriety grew such that even centuries later, hoaxes could cause a stir by publishing entirely fabricated verses in her name, predicting the world's end on a specific date, proving the enduring power her name held over the public imagination. So, who was Mother Shipton? A real woman, perhaps ostracized for her looks, whose sharp intelligence was mistaken for witchcraft. A genuine clairvoyant, gifted or cursed with glimpses of what was to come. Or largely a figure of folklore, a convenient peg upon which to hang prophecies both real and imagined? Perhaps she was a little of all three. She remains an enduring enigma, a face carved by unkind fate or supernatural design, peering out from the turbulent Tudor past. Mother Shipton, the witch, the wise woman, the prophetess. Her legend lives on, forever bound to the whispering waters of the Nid and the timeless mystery of what the future holds. Gog and Magog, guardians of London. Before London was London, before even the Romans laid their straight roads, legend tells us this island was a wild place inhabited by a race of fierce giants, remnants perhaps of an elder world. Then across the waves came Brutus, a refugee prince of ruined Troy, guided by destiny to find a new homeland for his people. He landed upon the shores of Albion, determined to carve out a kingdom, a new Troy, in this rugged, promising land. But the land was not empty. The giants, protective of their ancient domain, rose to meet the Trojan invaders. A great and terrible battle ensued upon the banks of the river that would one day be called the Thames. The earth trembled under the clash of bronze and bone as Brutus and his valiant warriors fought against the towering might of Albion's first children. Man matched muscle, sword met club, and the struggle for the future of the island raged furiously. One by one, the giants fell before the Trojans' skill and discipline, their massive forms crashing down like ancient trees in a storm. The battle was won, the land secured for Brutus and his followers. Yet when the dust settled, two giants remained, the very last of their kind, perhaps the largest and most formidable, Gog and Magog. Whether through sheer resilience or tactical capture, these final survivors were taken alive by the victorious Brutus. Having claimed his victory, Brutus founded his magnificent city, Troynovant, which time would come to call London, upon the very ground where the giants were defeated. And as a symbol of his triumph, a perpetual reminder of the wild forces overcome to establish civilization, he brought the captured Gog and Magog in chains to his new capital. There, at the gates of his royal palace, a site later associated with London's own Guildhall, he compelled the colossal figures to serve as porters, mighty humbled sentinels standing guard, testament to the dawn of a new era. And though the palace of Brutus is lost to time, the memory of its giant guardians endured. For centuries, watching over the deliberations and feasts within London's Guildhall, stood huge effigies of Gog and Magog. Carved perhaps first from wicker or plaster, later from solid wood, these towering figures became beloved symbols of the city's ancient liberties and mythical origins. Though fire and war have claimed successive statues, the Great Fire of 1666, the Blitz of 1940, Londoners have always rebuilt them, determined that Gog and Magog should continue their silent watch. They stand there still, wooden titans gazing mutely over centuries, even marching in replica form in the annual Lord Mayor's show. The names themselves, Gog and Magog, resonate with far older biblical echoes, often associated with forces opposed to God's people in apocalyptic prophecies. But London, in its unique way, claimed these ancient names and wove them into its own foundation story, transforming them from harbingers of destruction into steadfast, if somewhat fearsome, guardians of the city's heart. So Gog and Magog remain more than just statues, more than just names from a half-forgotten myth. They are the echo of London's legendary birth, a bridge to a time of giants and Trojan heroes. They represent the wildness overcome, the strength harnessed, the enduring power of civic identity, rooted in a deep and mythic past. They stand as colossal reminders that even the greatest cities rise from foundations laid in legend, forever guarded by the memory of the giants who walked there first. Wayland the Smith, Volendre, the master of revenge. Before the age of factories, before even the village blacksmith, legend speaks of Wayland, known also as Volendre in the Norse tongue. He was not merely a smith, he was the smith, the archetype, the master craftsman whose hands could shape wonders from gold, iron, and steel. Some whispered he was of elven kin, a prince among the hidden folk, inheriting magic with his mortal blood. Others knew him simply as the son of the giant Wade. Whatever his lineage, his skill was undisputed. Blades forged in his fire sang for sharpness. Jewels crafted by his touch held the light of captured stars. An intricate mechanism seemed almost alive beneath his knowing hands. It was this legendary skill and the treasures born from it that drew the greedy eyes of Nidhad, a powerful king whose avarice overshadowed his honor. Hearing tales of the solitary master smith and his wondrous creations, Nidhad led his warriors in stealth. They found Wayland asleep in his hall, perhaps exhausted from his work or weary with longing. They seized him, bound him, stole his magnificent sword, forged with secrets none could replicate, and took the most precious of his gold rings, which the king gifted to his own daughter, Bodvild. But capture was not enough for the cruel king. Fearing Wayland's strength, his magic, and the possibility of escape, Nidhad gave a terrible command. The smith's hamstrings, the powerful sinews behind his knees, were to be severed, crippled, hobbled, never again to stand tall or run free. This was the price Wayland paid for his genius. Maimed and heartbroken, Wayland was cast away onto a small, isolated island, Severstad. There, a forge was built, and the master smith became a slave, trapped in a cage of pain and craft. Day after weary day, he was forced to hammer out treasures for the king who had stolen his freedom and his function: helmets, shields, brooches, goblets, each piece a testament to the skill Nid had coveted. Yet each blow of the hammer deepened the bitterness in Wayland's soul. The fire of the forge burned hot, but the fire of vengeance smoldered hotter within him. Patience, a smith knows patience. Wayland waited, his crippled legs a constant reminder, his mind forging a plan far darker than any metalwork. King Nidhad's 2 young sons, greedy like their father, heard tales of the wonders in the island smithy. Lured by curiosity and the promise of gold, they secretly visited the captive smith. Wayland welcomed them with a grim smile. He showed them treasures, yes. Then, swiftly, silenced their young lives, hiding their bodies beneath the great bellows of his forge. He set to work with chilling artistry. From their skulls, he fashioned exquisite silver-inlaid drinking cups, sent as gifts to their father, the king. From their eyes, he made gleaming jewels for their mother, the queen, and from their teeth, delicate brooches for their sister, the Princess Bodvild. Later, the princess herself came to the island forge. She had broken the beautiful ring her father had stolen from Wayland, the ring meant for his lost swan bride. She asked the master smith, the only one capable, to repair it. Wayland agreed, but first offered her strong ale, drugged and helpless, ensuring his bloodline, his final bitter revenge, would continue within the king's own household. His vengeance complete, Wayland was ready. He contrived a way to lure King Nidhad to the shore opposite his island prison. Then, from afar, he revealed his gruesome deeds, the fate of the princes, the crafting of the horrific trophies, Bodvild and her ensuing pregnancy. As the king howled in impotent rage and horror, Wayland unveiled his final masterpiece. Working in secret, fueled by genius and desperation, he had constructed a pair of magnificent wings. Now, strapping them to his arms, the crippled smith, the master artisan, leaped into the air. He rose above his island prison, laughing down at the earthbound king, mocking his powerlessness. Like Daedalus of Greek myth, Wayland the smith flew away on wings of his own making, escaping his torment, leaving behind a legacy of unparalleled craft and terrible retribution. Our journey through England's legendary past concludes, but the stories themselves endure. They echo in place names, ancient carvings, and most vividly in the retelling. These tales of kings, outlaws, saints, specters, and heroes explore timeless truths about courage, compassion, vengeance, and the mysteries of the seen and unseen worlds.